Paperback Rocker, episode 75. Hey, this is Matt Severson, the Paperback Rocker, and I'm broadcasting from my 6x9 foot cinder block shack in the desert of northern Mexico, southern Texas. Welcome and thanks for checking out my show.
Broadcasting from a 9-foot cinder block shack somewhere in the desert. It's the Paperback Rocker Show.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your old friend Matt, the Paperback Rocker, back again with another episode of my little podcast, the King Biscuit Blue Whiskey Paperback Rocker Audiobook Hour. Probably a couple of you might understand that reference. But anyway, long story short, I'm back again. And I'm going to read once again from my novel, Blue Whiskey. And we will be starting in on page 116, chapter 11. And I want to let you know that this is available, I think for only about $4 or something, maybe $4.99 on Kindle. And you ought to check it out. It's also available in hardback. It's a beautiful hardback. And you can order one of those on Amazon or through me. Just contact me at paperbackrocker@live.com. When we last read, our hero, Stanton Wheelhouse III, had just spent an eventful evening with Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and Hank, a.k.a. Chester, also known as Hankster. And they had a wild time in a bar shooting pool together. And our hero introduced Johnny Cash to his trademark as being the Man in Black. All right, so I'm going to start in right now, page 116, chapter 11, and I will get a drink first. All righty. I loaded Hankster into the back of Wanderlust and drove him to the gas station. At some point in the evening, he had mentioned that he slept on a cot in the parts closet. When I stopped in the station's parking lot, I did everything I could to rouse him, but nothing worked. I even screamed oaky epithets at the top of my lungs. It wasn't pretty. So once again, I slept in the back of Wanderlust next to a strange man. Thankfully, none of these strange men had been strange men, if you know what I mean. I was up at first light. Not 2 hours later. I can't say that I slept. I just laid there with my eyes closed and my teeth gritted. All those black beauties wouldn't let me turn off my mind. I tried counting sheep, but decided that wasn't going to work when I got to sheep 695. Then I prayed. I said the Lord's Prayer over and over and over and over and over. I got up, agitated. I manhandled Hankster to an upright position and helped him to the front door of the gas station. His keys were on a retractable fob attached to his belt loop. I tried them all, but none worked. "Back door," he mumbled like a man on life support speaking his last words. I trudged him around, feeling like a Siamese twin with an invalid attached to my hip. I got the door open and didn't feel like wrestling Chester anymore. I plopped him down in the rolling chair behind a desk with a cash register on it. "Hank," I said, "best of luck in your music career." He didn't respond. I tried again. "Chester, best of luck in your music career." "Thanks, Stanton," he mumbled almost inaudibly. His lips did not move, but he was breathing. He had survived Waylon and Johnny. Barely. Nashville looked small in my rear view. The place had a Napoleon complex. I drove until I reached Lynchburg, Virginia. Then I had to sleep. This drive was like nothing I had experienced at that point in my young life. I know I've made similar statements previously, but please remember that I was young and the world was new to me. Heading out at dawn for a long drive is a unique experience we all have at some point. We drink coffee and wake up as we drive. It is a gauzy haze, drowsy and enjoyable. My drive was nothing like that. The sun rising in the east in front of me was blinding. I pulled over and bought 2 pairs of cheap sunglasses in a little grocery store. I don't know what compelled me, but I also bought a half-dozen spiral notebooks. Back behind the wheel, I put both pairs of shades on, to little relief. Due to the lack of sleep, my eyes felt like someone had thrown sand in them, and no amount of rubbing brought relief. My scalp tingled abnormally, and My scalp tingled abnormally, and my mouth tasted horrible. The 4 of us had smoked at least 100 cigarettes around that pool table, and many of the butts seemed to be nestled somewhere deep in my throat. My stomach was an empty void, but I had no desire to eat. I was not aware that the best thing I could have done would have been to stop and shove a large breakfast of nourishing eggs, bacon, hash browns, and pancakes down my throat. Instead, I charged forward like the folk singer of the apocalypse, ignoring even my need for water. As I neared Lynchburg, I realized in a panic that I couldn't feel my legs due to the vibration from the road. My mind was frantic, and it was all I could do to coast Wanderlust into a rest area outside of town. I parked and locked the doors and crumpled into the back to sleep for 15 hours, thankfully this time without companionship. When I woke, I made up my mind that there would be no more partying on my trip, especially involving amphetamines. I would make a beeline for the Atlantic Ocean, then wind my way up the coast to New York. I still planned to take my time and explore America, but no black beauties were in my immediate future. After lunch, I gave Reuben a call and told him about my trip so far. At the mention of black beauties, he warned, "Speed kills, Stanton. You can get hooked on those things before you know it." I'm speaking from... Oh, I forgot I'm supposed to be doing the Reuben voice. "Speed kills, Stanton. You can get hooked on those things before you know it. I'm speaking from experience." "Might I remind you it was my master Reuben who introduced me to the pills," I said. "And I haven't slept since you left." Meaning black beauties. "And you lecture me? I took my last one 4 hours ago. When it wears off, I'm going to sleep for a couple days, then I'll clean up my act. I guess losing you was kind of like losing the son of Faulkner." "Should I return?" I asked. "Nonsense, I'll be fine." "Okay, if you say so. It's just a leisurely drive up the coast for me." "Well, call me when you get there, or sooner if you want. Call your parents, too." "I'll think about it." I drove to Newport News, Virginia, and got my first sight of the mighty Atlantic. It was much different than my familiar Gulf of Mexico, far colder and more violent. I walked on the beach for hours, thinking about how far I'd come. I felt spectacularly insignificant. Introspection is common after liberating drug experiences, and seasoned druggies expect it, but this was uncharted territory for me. Clouds gathered on the horizon over the vast expanse of the Atlantic and moved in fast. I was alone on the beach when the storm hit. Wind came in a gale and cold rain fell in torrents. I sat on the sand with my face turned to the sky, eyes closed, and experienced the downpour like I never would have before my near overdose. By the time the tempest passed, something in me had changed. I meditated as the wind calmed. 2 short but significant statements came to me. I had not endured the storm. I had appreciated it. I would have felt like an idiot back home if I didn't take shelter from even a light rain, but things had changed, and I was much better artistically for it. I smiled and declared to myself that I would try to live in and learn from every moment of my life from this point. I rushed back to my van and retrieved one of the spiral notebooks and wrote on its first page, "Lesson learned. Experience every moment of my life as if they are all equal and none more important than another." Seeing the words on paper, it felt like a milestone in my personal development. I wrote again. Lesson learned. I will record all the lessons I learn in this notebook so I don't forget them and so I can learn from my lessons learned. And I'll stop real quick before I continue just to let you know, in the hardback, not in the Kindle, but in hardback, anytime he writes in his notebook, it is in a font that looks like handwriting. So it's pretty cool. So all these lessons learned that he's going to save from now on. So you got to check that out. Okay, back to the book. That was enough for the time being. There were many more feelings, but they weren't ready to be put into words. I went back to walk on the beach until my clothes dried. The sand was still wet from the rain. I thought about that. The grains of sand are individuals until the storm comes. Then they clump together, just like people. There's a song in that. Thinking more about my resolution to make every moment in my life count, I pondered, how can I make every day a success? My answer was, introduce at least one person to my music. I felt ill at that thought, realizing I had passed up the chance to perform for Waylon and Johnny, and Hank too, for that matter. From this day forth, I will expose myself to at least one person a day, I said. Then I laughed loudly at what I had said. I walked a little farther and felt foolish for laughing at such an important time. Do you really want to do this, Stanton? I said, still speaking to myself rhetorically. If you want to be a famous musician, you can't half-ass it. I fell on my knees. It was a melodramatic thing to do, but I wanted to know what it felt like. I wished I was wearing short pants instead of my jeans. I looked up at the sky, which was a study in gray. I wasn't conscious of it, but my mind raced through permutations of the many possible outcomes of my life, and it did so in seconds like a supercomputer. In the time that passed during this process, the sky changed subtly. The cloud cover thinned enough to allow the glow of the sun to be seen. The beauty was such that I felt very close to God. I want it, I screamed with my hands to the sky, availing the heavens. I've heard stories about bluesmen making deals with the devil at the crossroads. This wasn't like that. I rose to my feet and raced to Wanderlust. I had a gig that night. I didn't know where, but I had one somewhere. I dug through my clothes and realized I'd given Johnny Cash my only decent shirt. The rest of my clothes weren't rags, but they weren't what a professional musician would wear. This was the first thought I'd given to my image. I had a lot to do, and from that point, I always had a lot to do. Something clicked in me on that beach, and I was a man on a mission from then on. Every step, every thought, every dime I spent, every move I made was toward a singular goal, becoming a successful musician. I knew it wasn't going to happen overnight, though. Each evening from that day forward, I asked myself a question before I went to sleep. Was I a success today? If I could answer honestly, yes, then I had taken another step toward greater accomplishment. I drove back into Newport News and found a thrift store. I walked in hoping to find a shirt or two to replace the one I'd given Johnny Cash. I combed through the men's section to no avail. I found a few decent pearl snaps, but they didn't fit right and seemed too Western looking for a folk singer. As I passed the women's section on my way out, something stopped me. I hesitate to deem it enchanted serendipity because it was less than that. I brushed my hand along the women's blouses. My mind was thinking about things most men never consider. I rushed to the extra-large section and saw shirt after shirt, blouse after blouse, actually, that looked perfect for a performer to wear. I bought a silver long sleeve, as well as ones made from red rayon, pink satin, and floral patterns people would later swear were from India. I bought only the long-sleeved blouses because they were almost unisex, other than the buttons being on the opposite side than I was used to. The short-sleeved shirts had puffy sleeves and other embellishments that were too feminine for my comfort level. I wasn't a transvestite. I was a folk singer. I wore thrift store blouses for years and received high praise for my fashion sense. Lesson learned. Don't tell where I get my clothes. All right, that looks like a good place to stop. There's a fairly long section after that. Hope you've enjoyed this installment of Blue Whiskey. Not a lot of action in this episode, but some foundational occurrences that set the wheels in motion for Stanton's future life. All right. I may miss an episode or two in the coming week because I'll be taking a journey to Seattle, but I will be back, and I will probably be anxious to make and release a lot of new episodes. I'll tell you what Seattle was like after nearly 20 years away from it. I'm sure it's changed dramatically, as have I. So I will see you again soon. I'm sure I'll get another episode out this weekend before I leave. So I guess this is all just really just me rambling. Hope you have a good week. Hope you're enjoying the show, the reading of the book itself, the accents. Go back and check out the old episodes when I wasn't quite so facile on a microphone. You might get a kick out of them. I had to do a lot of editing back then. I'm not editing now. I just assemble the episode after I get done. That's all I got to do. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. See you soon. Bye.
The Paperback Rocker has signed off.